Hey, come on in, family. Come on in. And welcome back to CCH 360. Today, we are actually consciously connecting with another great humanitarian. I say great because I've had the pleasure of meeting this gentleman online, not yet in person, but it's been over a decade since we met. And let me tell you what, he has so much to share with us because he's not what I call just another Tai Chi player. His toolbox is full and he's all the way in a whole nother continent. And he took some time out of his day to come and share with us today. We have Mr. Zochi. This man is very diverse, so I'll just let him jump in and share his wonderful teachings with us all. So, Mr. Zochi, if you would, please, brother, fill us in.
I'll give you a small introduction and then we can explore as we go through. I'm a master Tai Chi teacher, and I have been studying for over 40 plus years, Tai Chi in Yang form and as well as Shin, and also have backgrounds in other martial arts like Bakwa and Aikido. And I have actually studied the martial arts longer than the 40 plus because I started off at 5 years old, learning martial arts, learning judo from my cousins and boxing from my uncle who was a Golden Glove boxer. So coming out of the womb, I have always been in the martial arts in one aspect of the other. And then I moved to California, went to college there, and at the same time, I started studying with Douglas Wong and Carl Totten, where we're doing Shaolin, and I became a part of the Shaolin fighting team. So having a lot of experience in, there's always conversations on the Tai Chi network about fighting and so forth and so on. I've actually done that in the street and in the ring. And moving from California, graduated, then I went to Hawaii where I met my first Tai Chi teacher who introduced me to my second Tai Chi teacher. My first teacher was Arlene Lester, and who introduced me to her teacher, T.Y. Pang. And then later, during my travels throughout Asia, I studied in Japan and China in Tai Chi. And from there, I've been teaching. I've taught to the military, I've taught to civilian organizations and hospitals. And right now I'm teaching in Ethiopia and Kenya. So that's a little bit about my background.
What I'm wondering about, and it's kind of just a format question, but what are your top 3 martial arts techniques to teach? When you
Okay, that's it's an interesting question. I think I understand what you're pulling for as far as techniques, but I focus primarily on characteristics, foundation. So like awareness and listening, control, self-control, management of adrenaline, stillness, preparedness, understanding how the physics of Tai Chi and how we can take an individual off balance. So that, the techniques, without the core, I don't believe techniques are, a punch and a kick are always the same, right? That is a technique. But understanding the principles underneath, the stillness practice, the being aware of yourself, the environment, and being able to listen, those are kind of techniques or principles that you can use in and out of the Tai Chi world. So as a Tai Chi practitioner, or just in your everyday life, those that you carry with you every day. So I hope that answers your question. You want a little bit more details, I can probably pull something out. But that's really what I focus on. I focus on principle. Technique will come through form and practice. And once you have the core principles underneath you, and you begin to change your programming and get out of the fear and the noise of your head, then the techniques will come based on the situation that you're in.
The next question goes more towards the healing side of Tai Chi. And if you're going to start a class and teach healing practices, which ones would you start with?
Well, I mean, I start off all my classes, we do tapping and massage, starting off with there. And then we do Qigong, or actually then we do silk reeling, so loosening up the joints. And then we do Qigong practice. And then depending on where the student is at, then we start with mu-i, which is the first introduction form that I teach, because it has underlying principles and practices, and there's an integration of contemporary language, affirmations, and therefore the students are open and ready to receive the teaching, and it's not foreign to them. So as a teacher over a period of time, I've realized that, it's like I can teach you high path horse and snake creeps down and so forth and so on, but we have to realize those names were developed during a time and in nature that there was a relationship that people had with those terms. Instead of going brush knee, we do move obstacles out of the way. Instead of the monkey steps back, then we do reach back and get, which is implying to get the best from our ancestors and the knowledge that came before us, and then we bring that forward. So that instead of dragon's tail, we use surrender, letting go, but not giving up. So it's more of a contemporary, and it addresses the practitioner's internal need. And so if they're there for healing and so forth and so on, I interview all my students. And typically I only teach in groups. And so one of the first questions I ask them is, why are you here? What is your intention? And once I can get underneath that, then I understand the fear, that why they're there and what they're attempting to achieve, and then I can address my training accordingly. A separation between healing practices, because they take a long time, and martial practices, which require a long time and a dedication, because you're working with two different psyches or neural patterns that you're planting into the student.
That's interesting, because our last interview was with Master Marilyn Cooper, and I asked her the same question, and she didn't have a lot of differentiation between a martial side and a healing side. And that's the reason I asked, because I do see a definition there. But
yeah, I mean, as a person who has fought and fought in the street, there are things that normally, if we teach the spectrum from one to the other, the student won't get. So for example, how do you manage adrenaline? Right? You have to, because in a real or controlled environment, adrenaline is your fight, flight, fear, or freak, right? and that will determine your performance. If you've never dealt with that and you go into a situation, the chances are you're going to lose, unless the other person is worse than you. So we deal with that. We deal with the also, depending on what type of fighting or martial practice that you're talking about, we talk about the legal aspects of implications of getting into conflict. Even by accident, if you push someone and they fall and they hit themselves against cement, there's a repercussion that will happen, and there's a risk associated with it. So the students have a better understanding, if they're dealing with conflict, why it's important to walk away if you have these skills, because there's a legal implication to that. We're not a community of push hands. As a martial, or I'm not sure what it is, how people see it. I see it as a drill that teaches the student to have sensitivity. There are other aspects of push hands and other forms that actually teach movement of back and forth and how to apply the technique, right? So it's a progressive process versus, are we going to push, right? I try not to even use the word push. I use the word we'll lead, right? Because that's what we're doing. If we're listening, then the other individual is pushing or going in the direction that they want you to go. And Tai Chi is using the masculine and feminine. We're leading that energy to a point that the individual is off balance, the balance is broken, or they've gotten where they need to be. And then you follow up and it's your turn. So